Good morning, everyone. My name is Elisa Udaskin, and I'm a director here at JVS MetroWest, Jewish Vocational Service of MetroWest. We're located in East Orange and Montclair, New Jersey, and our JVS Job Seekers program, which this is a part of, is generously sponsored by the Jewish Federation of Greater MetroWest and by Project M. And we thank them so much so that we can make this available to all of you. This morning, I am delighted to welcome our guest speaker, Sarah Gurwitz. Sarah is an HR consultant and instructor with more than 30 years of experience in human resource management. She advises federal agencies and private sector organizations and serves as an adjunct professor at NYU Wagner, where she teaches graduate level courses in human resource management. Previously, Sarah spent over 20 years as Director of Human Resource Management at a VA medical center in New York City, as well as a decade consulting to the Undersecretary for the Veterans Health Administration. Her work includes HR training, human capital program development, organizational assessment, workforce planning, and policy design. This is the another cool part. Sarah is also a former Peace Corps volunteer and, wait for this, a tour guide of New York's historic Lower East Side. So if you guys take a tour there, you may get Sarah. She holds degrees from SUNY Fredonia and Hofstra University, along with extensive continuing education in HR and leadership. It's my pleasure to turn it over to Sarah.
Well, thank you so much, Elise. This is pleasure for me to be able to do something like this. Like it said in my bio that I teach human resources. I teach a lot of classes on interviewing, but just as a point, I generally teach the class to people who are managers and hiring managers and help them get comfortable with doing interviews, because on the most part, a lot of them always tell me that they are really not so comfortable doing interviews. So you're on the other side of this, being interviewed by people maybe who aren't so comfortable. Best for you to start becoming as comfortable as you can with your skills. And I'm going to give you some tips and pointers, and hopefully you'll have some questions for me. And hopefully this will be able to kind of provide some things for you to think about the next time you have to go for an interview. I'm going to be sharing my screen not only with a PowerPoint, but I have some documents that I've created for this. I'll be sharing that. And again, everything will be shared, the PowerPoint as well as all the documents at the after the program. So let me start with my PowerPoint. So, and of course I did it not so perfectly. Hold on. There we go. All right. Elise, showing, right? The PowerPoint's up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the topic is preparing for a job interview. So I look at it as kind of like a little roadmap that I like to always kind of have in my head. What's the whole thing? And then I can dig into each one of the stops that we're going to make along the way. And basically the roadmap is know the company you're going to, know the position you're being interviewed for, know who you are and what your stories are. You need to practice, and you need to do mock interviews to be able to start being comfortable with what you want to tell those hiring managers. So let's start and just jump right into our first stop on our little road trip here. Research the company. You're applying for a job, either you saw it on ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, or someone gave you a reference or connected you. I think understand who that company is. Know what their mission, vision, values are. Are there key competitors? Where are they in that industry? And there's so many resources now that you can do that. Go out and Google the company. Find out as much as you can so you understand. They'll have a little blurb. If you look at LinkedIn, you'll see a little blurb about the company. But you really want to know who they are, what they do, and is it part of what you want to do? I understand looking for a job when you don't have a job is really you're gonna just throw yourself out there, but make sure it's something where you want to go. The other thing is make sure the job that you are being interviewed for or applied for. Look at the job announcement. Look at the job itself, and we're going to talk about different ways you can find out more about a job. Make sure that your resume or whatever you're submitting, if it's an application that they have whatever you're submitting really aligns with that particular job. Um, Most of the people I come in contact with, my students, and they have lots of copies of their resume for different kind of directions that they want to go. Make sure you're sending the one that matches the job. And one of the ways, there's a couple ways you can do this, but one of the better websites is My Next Move and ONET. So ONET is the overall thing. I'm going to just jump there for a moment, and I'm not 100% sure. Let me see if this works. I have a feeling you don't see the next move. Is that true, Elise?
No.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
it's not, but try again, or I
Okay.
can, or just take your time because I think it's very good. And otherwise, like, there you go. It's right
Yeah.
there. Perfect.
So this is My Next Move, and you can look if I'm looking to maybe I'm going to use a generic job title. I'm going to use administration. It's always administrative service managers. It's a general job area. And if you're in My Next Move, it'll give you kind of some basic skills that they're looking for, business skills, what they want to know, the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities. Make sure your resume kind of matches all of that. It gives you a little bit more about that job. And at the bottom, it gives you even a link right to go to ONET. I am going to switch to ONET, and I don't know. Let me see if
Sarah,
that works.
before you switch to Own It, would you mind if
Sure.
I just talk a little bit more about my next move?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, so if you go to the home screen, okay, just click on my next move back. Yeah. Okay. So we use this a lot with our clients. Sarah's going to go into one aspect of it, but I just want to give a little bit more about the overview. So if you know specifically what you are interested in doing, like a data analyst or something, then you would start with the far left, I want to be at, and you do search careers with keywords and you put in data analyst. Okay. And I want to just show you guys a few more features of this. Okay. So click on data scientist. That's fine. Okay. It gives you all these different options. What's really cool about this, okay, is it tells you what they do. And if you scroll down, you can actually see what I love is this job outlook. Okay. And when Sarah goes through ONET, she'll show you that as well. Because when you're thinking about, a lot of people are having the questions, is my job going to become obsolete, right? One of the ways that you can do this is you can take a look and see what the future is. You can also check out in your you don't have to click on this, Sarah, anymore. I'm just going to talk to it about in your state and local salary info in your state. Okay. About that. It will also give you, as you're searching and playing with this, adjacent adjacent types of roles, okay, that you can explore. On the left side, what's really cool is if you, it could tell you about training, certifications, apprenticeships, and things like that. Again, because remember, when we go through, you have a job description. If you are something that you're really want to pursue, but you have a gap in training, this is just a really useful thing. Sarah, please go back one screen. I just want to show the next. Thank you. What, back another screen. Okay. Okay. So if you know you're in pharmaceuticals, right? You can put that. And then I'm not going to ask you, Sarah, to click on any of this. I'm just going to speak to this. And then if you're really not sure, there's a really cool discover your interests. When you press start there, like if you're not sure, you want a career pivot, you're not sure, you go through this whole
Oh,
thing.
sorry.
It's okay. It's a whole survey, and then it gives you ideas. And then what's really cool with the results is that it's all linked with the results and the suggestions that you can find out more in just like one click for all
Oh,
the
God,
different options.
sorry.
So
It keeps
now,
jumping back and forth. Sorry. Is
no,
it
that's
jumping back?
okay.
Okay.
So why don't you go now, Sarah, to what you want to do to continue your presentation? But thank you for letting me to share
Okay.
this. My
Okay.
next move. Yeah.
Okay. So at the bottom, it has a link to ONET. So let's say, let me go back to, I just want to show you ONET because once you're applying for a specific job, um, if I'm applying for like an administrative service, at the bottom, it's got a link to ONET. And I think it takes you there. Let me see. Am I, at least is ONET up or no?
It is. It is.
Okay, great. It worked. That's rare. So this one under administrative, this gives you a lot more specifics. So when you're looking at your resume and you're looking at the job, this gives you very specific tasks. So you start having a much deeper understanding of that job. Does my resume match these kinds of things? I have these things, but you know what? They're not in my resume. Bring a no copy of your resume to the interview, a more updated resume. You really want to be able to show them that you have the skills, you have the software skills they need, you have the knowledge that's needed, the education, the abilities, the interests, that your resume matches all of those pieces. So that's kind of step one. In Did my PowerPoint come back up? Just
Yeah. And so,
Elise.
Sarah, it's like literally less than a second, but when
Okay.
as you're talking, then it comes up. So as soon as you
Okay.
finish that sentence, we're perfect.
All right. Yeah. So remember, know what the company's about. Make sure your resume matches the job posting. So that's kind of just really just making sure all the pieces match and that you know what you're going into. So let's go to the next step. Know what your strengths are. And this is really where the important pieces start. Be able to articulate what your strengths are, but also know areas where you know you have to grow and be really clear on what you do, maybe that you're doing to make sure you have those areas where you can improve. Know what who you are from a professional standpoint. So it's just kind of spend a little bit of time. And as silly as this sounds, I actually say sometimes to people, take out a piece of paper and write down what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses. People will ask those kinds of questions. As silly as they are, people ask those at interviews. And I'm going to talk about giving answers, really good answers to that kind of a question. So maybe sketch out, what are my strengths? I'm really good at doing analysis. I'm good at bringing people together. I'm good at leading groups. I'm good at looking at the future, and I'm a great writer. Where I'm weak is sometimes I let things fall through the cracks. So you know where your strengths are, know where your weaknesses are. And that's kind of your first step in kind of getting what you want to tell these people at that interview. So spend a few moments thinking to yourself, what are my strengths? You don't have to do this for every interview. You can have like a journal that you keep that really you're putting these things down and keeping track of them. So I've spent some time. I know the company. My resume is really good, and I know what my strengths are. So what do I do with all of this? And we go to our next step. And this sounds silly, but you want to prepare your stories. Think of experiences that you've had and build the story on STAR. And I'll talk about what STAR is in a moment. You want to choose the stories that you're going to be telling them about times where you had to take a leadership role, times where you had really complex problems, times where you had really short deadlines, times where you maybe were working with some people that you didn't get along with them, times where you had to then be able to come back from something that didn't work and make it work. You want to think about those experiences that you had and how you, in fact, what that story is. And we'll talk about STAR because that becomes really important in a minute. But what you want to do is be able to tell your story in 90 seconds, a minute and a half. You want to be able to tell that story. I had an opportunity to take a lead with a program when I was in school where we were trying to solve some problems with the way the classroom was set up. And we were looking to see, did we need a new classroom? Could we move someplace else? There were 3 people on the team. I was the team lead. This is how I handle the team. So that's your story. And you want to talk about it. People always say, well, I don't have any work experience. That's okay. You can get experience by being in a volunteer organization. You can get experience, um, programs that you were part of in school. Um, Obviously, experiences and stories that you want to tell about jobs that you had, where I was working for a company and some of the goals that had been set, we were not meeting those goals. They put together a 5-person work team. I was a member of that team. This is the way the team worked. And so you be able to tell that story in 90 seconds. And we're going to move at one point after we know what our stories are and we've been able to describe them in the star format. We'll then have to think about how does that match what I just learned about that job on ONET or my next move. And you'll see how this fits together in a moment. Okay, so what is this star? The star is you want to tell the story by what was the situation? We had a problem, we weren't meeting our goals. What was the task? It was a team that was put together to analyze all the data that we had. What we did, we analyzed all that data. We used a lot of statistical tools. We used AI. We put everything out on an Excel spreadsheet. We did statistical analysis of the data that we had. We were looking at it very specifically. We drilled down into it. What were the results? We came up with 4 issues that the team was not coordinating. And because of that, we set up some goals for ourselves on coordination of meeting on a weekly basis to be able to make those things work. That is telling a story about when I was on a team, what the situation was, what our job was, what the action was, and what the results were. And when I'm telling the story, I think one of the most important parts of it is what did you do? The team was charged with. I was a member of that team. I was responsible for getting all the data, putting it into spreadsheets, and drilling down into all of the points of where the data was not meeting the goal that we set. That's what I did. That was the task that I was assigned. The action was I pulled all the data, I analyzed the data, I found 3 or 4 places where maybe it was not meeting the standard. The results of the report were, and I had the responsibility of writing up 3 of the pilot projects that we were going to roll out to see if we could change the way we were meeting our goals. That tells a story. So thinking about, I came up with what my strengths are. I came up with some of the things that I've done in my career, my life, and I've put them into a star response. It takes time to do this. I'm not gonna, sugarcoat this in any way. It does take a lot of time. The other side of this, by the way, is when I'm teaching managers how to assess candidates, I say, what are the competencies? Analyze that job. What are the competencies? And what are the questions that you want to ask those people to find out what they have done? And this is a challenge. I think lots of times managers don't prepare for interviews. They walk in and say, "Oh, tell me about yourself." That's not a great way to find out about candidates and what they can do. Maybe you find out about a little bit about their personality, but it doesn't tell me how they can analyze data, how they can lead a team, how they can do research, how they can meet and greet customers, how they can come up with solutions to problems. It tells me what they want to tell me about them. So part of my job when I'm working with hiring managers is think about the questions that are going to help you find out what that person did. It's great
Sarah.
when you,
Oh,
oh, sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry if I
Question.
paused. I don't know
Sure.
if now's the right time to talk about this, but this is the ideal situation that when the first step is an HR screener, then you are probably with an HR person, then you start working, you have interviews with people who you'd report to or peers or things like that. I wish everybody had your training in terms of how to kind of, but I
Thank you,
just
Ray.
don't think they do. Can you please talk
No,
to
they
that?
don't. They don't.
Yeah.
It just kind of as an aside, I think I'm going to stop the share just for a moment. Um, let me just stop share for a moment. Let me tell you a little bit of story. So I always, one of the reasons, well, how did I get into this in the beginning? So it's just, I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and one of my jobs was helping people who were not working out, you know, help them leave and go to another place. Sometimes they had to get fired. So we were once in the process of someone was not working out well, and someone turned around and said, "Well, how did we hire that person to begin with?" A group of us then went on our way to actually analyze how are we hiring people, and we really changed our whole mindset on how do we hire people, and we started thinking about what is the best way to do it. One of my proudest moments is that they still use some of the stuff that we researched and found. And one of the things we found was using behavior-based questions based on the competencies that I want to get from those people. Um, and what really kind of drove me to this was the worst interview I've ever had in my life. I was uh, I was just looking around for another job. I like my job, but you never know. So I was looking around for a job, and I went in to another hospital in the New York metropolitan area, and I got there half hour early, which I'll talk about it towards the end of our discussion. And I go in, and I'm sitting there for almost an hour. He kept me waiting almost an hour. I was actually getting really angry. Don't do this to people. It was a high level job I was being interviewed for. But I did have a chance to see his secretary not be able to get any resources. So I thought to myself, God, his secretary can't get any resources. What will I be able to? What am I going to get? So I started noticing it. He finally walks in. He starts looking at my resume for the first time. And then I started realizing this is just such a poor way to interview people. And that's what actually started me down the road of thinking about helping people change how they interview. He then started, so tell me about yourself. And then, no, I'm sorry, I take it back. His first question was, do you have any questions? I said, yeah, I do. So I opened my book with all my questions in it. He said, wow, that's incredible. Do you have that many questions? I said, well, I really want to know about the job. Um, what are some of the responsibilities? The announcement was short. He was taken back and he just didn't know what to ask me, and then just kind of asked some silly questions. And I had already decided if they offer the job, I'm not taking it. I was lucky I had a job. I will admit that. But it started me thinking about how people don't prepare for interviews. And then I had this opportunity at the VA to really kind of start working on developing better ways to interview people. And they really gave us free rein. I was very, very fortunate. I will not diminish that. And we actually started a whole plan of helping people learn how to do what we call behavior-based interview. It's behavior-based interviewing, which a lot of organizations are now moving towards that. And what we hope is that people analyze the job. What are the competencies? I need someone who knows certain skills. I need someone who can meet and greet, has good customer service skills. I need someone who can do data analytics. So I want to ask questions about that. And I want to know what the person did, because there is a belief that your past behavior is one of the best predictors of your future behavior. And that became kind of the goal that we set. I am happy to report that across most of the Department of Veterans Affairs now, they still use the behavior-based questions, and we built a whole database for them to help them of questions. You actually can get those questions, and I'm going to show you how you can get some of the behavior-based questions for any job that's out there. There's also, if you went to Amazon and put in under search for books, behavior-based interviewing, you will get hundreds of books on behavior-based interviewing. I'm going to pull that back for a minute because I want to help you kind of, as the applicant, how do you take this to the next step? But I have to tell you, it was an interview that changed my life. And actually, one of the higher level people in the VA said, how are we hiring people who don't have the skills we want? It was like we all went, duh. And we really started down this road of thinking about what are people's skills? How do we assess the skills? And how do we then ask questions to find that out? What I learned on the other side of people like yourself who are going to be going for interviews is they're going to ask me questions that are not behavior based. What do? I give them a behavior based answer. And that's why you need to have your stories. That's why you have to have what's my story? And I want to really pass that on to them. I want to let them know what the situation was, what the action was, what the task was, what the results were. Even if the results stunk, I want to be able to tell them we actually couldn't solve the problem. But what I learned from that was, because then it tells that interviewer a little bit more. They may ask you questions about, tell me about yourself. Well, you want to go into a good thing about what kind of person you are based on STAR. I generally will take situations like ba ba ba. I generally will then work on this to get to the results. These are the tasks that I generally set myself. So you can always tell them the story, even if they don't ask you the right question. So that's kind of my how I got to where this point in my my career is. How I got to be a tour guide is another story altogether. That I just tripped on something and became a tour guide. So just as an aside, you never know what's going to come across your street, and you got to be able open for it all the time. So I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think now, did I ever get interviewed to be that tour guide? Probably not. Anyway, let me go back to sharing my screen because I have some other things that I did that I just need to
Eh,
know.
We're
Okay.
all good. We're all
All
good.
right. I always have to just double check.
Perfect.
Okay. So always bear in mind start. Now, I actually created a tool that, let me hold off on the tool right now. Um, So let me go to the next slide. So, okay, so we've got our stories. We got them kind of in a star format. I can tell that story in 90 seconds. The next step is I've done all my kind of research. Now I want to think, what would be some questions people would ask me? So what I always do now is I go to AI and say, could you come up with some interview questions for this position? So what I did to kind of help you out, and I'm going to talk about two different kinds of questions in a moment. I talked a little bit about behavior based. Let me share with you what I did. This is not the one I want. This is the one I want. Are you seeing office administrator?
Yes. And
Okay, that's great.
yes. And can you
Okay,
please
so I
increase,
went to ZipRecruiter. This is a real job.
increase the
So I went to
font?
ZipRecruiter.
Increase the font. Increase the font.
Okay, all right, all
View.
right. Woo. So I went into
Thank you.
ZipRecruiter and I found this job, and it was okay. I found a couple. I decided to focus on this one. They give you a little bit about the role. They talk about the qualifications they're looking for and preferred. They also tell you about the knowledge that they want you to have, any certifications, what the day-to-day responsibilities are, what skills they're looking for. This is not non-remote. So then I took this job description, this announcement and job description, and I used Chat GPT. I actually gave it a prompt. What would be some interview questions for the attached job listing? I'm always impressed. I write job questions for people all the time. I have to tell you, one of the things I really do like AI for this because it gives me some language that I can then tweak for the very specific job. But they did it for this specific job. And they gave you really key things to focus on: organization and multitasking skills, communication, attention to detail, financial and administrative support, human resource support, problem solving, behavior and cultural questions. They also gave you some scenario based questions. So I took this and I created for myself um, another tool. I created a star worksheet so I could actually write all this stuff out. So here's my situation, task, action, and
Excuse
result.
me. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Just zoom in a little bit more. And everybody remember, we are sending this all out to you, but just, perfect. You can stop. Okay.
Okay. So
Go
here's
ahead.
a star worksheet that I created. So you can look at the questions that were in that AI thing, the AI results. And I can write, okay, let me think about some times that I had to use my organizational and manager and multitasking skills. Oh, I was given 4 assignments at the same time on the last job I had. I had to do a data analytics. I had to rewrite a policy. I had to come up with a training manual for a particular for new employees. I had these 3 tasks, very short time frame to do it. So that was the situation. What did I do? I divided all of them up. I really set my framework on how I would attack each one of these things. So what my first task was is to break it down and create a way of addressing it. What was the action I did and what was the results? So I do it for each one of these. I can drill down also into the questions that I got when I went to AI. And here I'm just going to show you, I came up with some. So you take what you find on AI and think about these are the kind of areas. And so a real very typical kind of a question that would come out of a behavior-based interview questionnaire would be, tell me about a time when you had to manage multiple competing priorities in an office environment. How did you stay organized? If you just got this and hadn't thought about any of your things, you may be sitting there for a good amount of time thinking about what's the story I want to tell them. That's why it becomes so important. Know what your stories are, practice them, and be able to move it and change it easily from question to question. This role requires handling sensitive financial and personal information. How do you maintain confidentiality? Tell me in past positions. Tell me about a situation like that. This came out for that particular job that was on ZipRecruiter. These are not generic ones. I mean, you can go and ask. Um, I've asked Google on times, give me about 4 or 5 questions related to organization, managing multiple tasks. If that is a key factor um, in um, in the job, and I'm a hiring manager, I would go in and say, give me 3 or 4 questions related to this, and then I'd pick out the best one for me. On your side of it, oh, this is what AI thinks for this particular job that's been posted on ZipRecruiter. Here are some of the questions. Here are some of the competency areas they're going to look at. Which of my stories match this? So that's why you need to really prepare. You need to know. And, quite frankly, you don't have to do this every single time. You're going to have your stories. You're going to know what your stories are. You're going to know the big projects you worked on, the ones that were successful, the ones that weren't successful, some of the things that you did while you were in school, projects you work on. You work in a volunteer organization or you're volunteering and they've asked you to do some stuff. All of those are experiences that basically tell the interviewer what you've done. And the concept that I hope that they take is your past experiences are one of the best predictors of what you'll be able to do on the job. If you were good at meet and greet as in customer service and solving client problems, you'll be probably good at meet and greet in um, in another situation.
So,
Another
Sarah,
type, sure.
what I just want to add, as you're mentioning about it takes a lot of work to do these star and you can go back at it. What I like to do when I'm searching for a job is
Mhm.
I have one long document with really nice, and I've worked really hard on it, star examples for different behavioral questions uh, uh, that I've accumulated from different job interviews. Okay.
Oh, good
And so I
point.
have this long list and I
Yeah.
keep that. And then for each interview, I go through the job posting. And I mean, now with AI, I can run it through to ask which one. So to prepare for that interview,
Mhm.
I just look at my list and then I like to make a new document, have the company name for myself, prep for Microsoft or something like that, and put those star
Put
examples
it to
on
the
it.
star.
So
Yeah.
it does take a long time to practice this. Like what Sarah is saying, I really recommend that you practice with someone um, how to answer these questions. It takes a long time. It is so worthwhile and worth the time investment because you will be using it over and over and over again.
Yeah. 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 Once you've done this you're going to be, once you have your stories and you've really kind of been able to craft them into a way of responding to let the person know what you've done, because that's going to help them know what you can do. Um, yeah. Good point. I'm going to talk a little bit about practicing and evaluating yourself at the end of an interview also. There's another type of question, which I always find so interesting, scenario based questions. Here was one of the ones that came off of that AI one I did for the job on ZipRecruiter. Suppose you discover an error in a financial report just before it was submitted. What do you do? And you can tell them what you would do. I just have to tell you a short. So I was teaching a class of financial of IT specialists on. I think it was the Park Service actually. I was doing it for. So um, I was teaching them about that, and I gave them. We were talking about scenario based questions. They're not bad. However, you really have to be careful when you're asking one. I was saying, and then I gave this very long, involved answer on a question that they came up with, and they said, "Wow, we'd hire you." And I looked at them and said, "I just made all of that up," and they were stunned. What do you mean? I said, "Just made it up." I'm not a big fan of scenario based questions unless you, as an interviewer, ask the scenario And now tell me about why you would do it that way, something that you've done on why you've done it that way. So look at those scenario questions, give the answer you would give, but add on there. The reason I say this is because when I was doing something very similar, I was doing situation, task, action, results. This is why I would answer it that way. I've learned from those things. And that tells that interviewer so much about you. One, you've thought about what you've done and how you would apply it in the future. Boy, it tells them a lot. Um, it's so valuable. I always thought it was so interesting that those people would have hired me. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, but
Okay,
I'm a good liar.
Sarah, I want to put a highlight, an asterisk, a love, a star behind this gem that you just gave us. Okay.
That I
This is
lied? Thank you.
now the other part, which I hadn't thought about until you shared this with me. Okay.
Yeah.
When we went preparing for this, I haven't heard other speakers really talk about this. So give me or what would happen in a scenario if you did X, Y, or Z? Now that will come up a lot, right?
Yeah. Oh, it comes up a lot,
But what
actually.
you just said and the gem, Sarah, for everybody to remember to do is say it, but follow really quickly with, and the reason I would do it this way is because I had a similar situation, or the reason I would do it this way is because of the analytical thinking or methodological blah 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 that I've gained from all my years of being a da 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 da. Okay, very articulate, I know. But the point is, it could be that you've done something before and
Right.
that was close to it, or it could be because of your years of experience as a teacher. I know how to da 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 for this. And guys,
Yeah.
this is the gem is don't just leave it at the scenario, tie it back and you're going to keep it. Remember, it's a conversation and it's going to be memorable and you're just going to add more credibility to your answer of how you know how to handle this. I love that, Sarah. So asterisk, love, heart, star.
Yeah, what I generally teach when I'm teaching hiring managers is ask the scenario and then tell me. Then I always say you've got to follow it up with tell me about a situation that led you to respond that way. You don't have to wait for them to ask that; they may not. So you just want to follow that up with that on your side of it. So I always think about both sides of it. The other thing when you're telling your stories, one of the things you want to be able to tell the hiring person, the person doing the interviewing, is who can give more information about this. I generally, when I'm teaching the hiring manager, I always say, well, who, I always tell them, ask them who can give me more information about this. Why is that? Because that then tells you who, that tells the hiring person who to call for a reference. Don't call someone who may not know what I did, especially if I'm doing it as a volunteer for my church. I may say, you know, I did this as part of, I was on a committee at my church, and we were looking how can we get more members, and I worked on this project. The person who would probably give you much more information about this is the person who was the team lead on that, Mary Jones. If you want, I can get you her information. You want to drive them to the people who will give them information about your skills. I always thought to myself, I always thought it was the strangest thing that they would call people they didn't know and ask. See, it just take for, you know, someone tells you they were really good at custom. You know, I had someone who came in and they were a very difficult client. I listened to what their story was. They calmed down. I was able to actually get them to the right person. The person who could tell you more about that is Susan Smith, and this is her number because she was my at that time my immediate supervisor. She's not there any longer, because if you just called my current supervisor, she may not know anything about that. And she may not know enough about me. Here you're asking, you want to know about what they've done. So you want to tell, you want to drive them to where, so you've got to know, again, the stories, who was involved with those stories, what your role was, what you did. So you want to have all this information really kind of comfortable in you. And again, we're going to talk about how do you get it comfortable within you. So you've got two kinds of questions. You've got those, for anyone who prepared, they've got good behavior based questions, they've got good scenario questions. And you're kind of trying to figure out what they are so you're comfortable with your story to tell them and how they can get more information about that. To me, that's a really critical thing because I always think they'll call your last supervisor. If your last supervisor didn't like you because the way you did something, um, but the new person likes what you do, you know, the person who's interviewing you, they're never going to get a good picture of who you are. And you want that person who's interviewing to know who you are and what you've done and have resources that do that. Now, the other side of all of this is when I'm teaching the hiring managers, most of them think I'm actually off the wall. I always suggest you give a couple of these questions in advance to see how well they prepare. What, are you crazy? They could cheat. How could they cheat? They're going to go out and get a whole experience and bring it back the next day. I've always kind of really lent towards giving people the questions. They're complicated questions. I want to get the answer. This is not a quiz. That's what I teach the hiring people. So know who you can. They may not do this. I try to encourage people to give the questions in advance. I've always been very successful with giving the questions in advance because sometimes people don't prepare. And I thought to myself, oh, that tells me a lot about them. Their past behavior predicts their future behavior. So if I gave you the question and you didn't prepare, you're not going to get hired by me. I guarantee it. Because if I give you an assignment, you're going to decide you don't want to do it. That's just an aside. But
So
not
Sarah, I could, to what you just said, excuse me, like most people who are interviewing you aren't trying to trump up, aren't trying to, sorry, oh gosh, aren't trying
quiz
to
you.
trick,
I
scare,
don't know.
whatever, the interviewer. Like the people who are interviewing,
Yeah,
they have
they
a
want to
need.
get.
They're overworked. They need to hire someone who's qualified to help them with their team. They want to do that.
Yeah,
So they're not going to,
you hope. You
you
hope
hope,
this.
but exactly, you hope. The one scenario that I will, I'd like to share in this context is that if you're on a panel interview, okay, and let's say you interviewed with the director and you had a great interview, and then the director says, you know what, I want to bring in my team to interview you for the final round. Okay. Actually, I'm talking about this from experience. I was brought in, I had a meeting with the interview with, the screener, the HR, then with the president of a division. It went really, really well. And then I was brought in with the other directors who would be my peers with the president. Well, wouldn't you know it, one of the directors literally was asking me a question. I didn't understand it. It was a three-part question. It just didn't. So I was starting to figure out, I was looking for clarity. And what I realized was happening is the dynamic wasn't very good in this room. And it was like one director over the other trying to like show them up in front of their boss versus actually talking to me. And it was very, 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 very uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Yes.
So in a panel situation, what I suggest is, do your best. Don't take things personally. Try to keep your cool because you're not
Yeah.
sure in a panel interview the dynamics
Yeah.
of the people interviewing you. And your
Right.
job is to stay calm, cool, and
Right.
collected
Right.
and direct your answers to the person who's asking you. Then you want to still talk to the other people, but there can sometimes be a couple of wonky things happening.
Yeah. 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 That they're, someone's pulled in at the last minute to come in to be part of this thing. And it's like, what am I here for? And what do I,
Yeah.
you know, I strongly always suggest that I actually think panel interviews are very good. It gives you, from a hiring side, it gives you a good balance that I won't have unconscious bias. That, oh, I really like that person, but the answers were really stupid, but I don't hear it because I like the person. So I always like to have a panel anyway, but you know, because not everybody does that. Um, you want, and something you just said, which is so critical, maintaining your composure and being cool. The more prepared you are for the answers, and you know what? If you don't understand the question, um, I'm not sure I'm clear on what you're looking for. Could you help me understand what you're looking for a little bit better? Have your standard follow-up kinds of things, especially if you don't understand something. Um, it's okay to ask. If you don't understand what they're saying, don't try to answer it. Really ask them. I'm not sure I understood what you're looking for. Could you help me? Could you help me with that? Be honest. Be who you are. They because that helps them. If you're an honest person and you don't understand something,
In
that
fact, and
tells them a
yeah.
lot about you.
And in
So
fact, I think from an interviewer perspective, I much prefer if someone says, can you please give me more clarity? I'm not sure about that. Rather than when this happens often, they answer something like, here's the question, and they answer something completely going this way that's different. I would
Yeah.
much prefer if they say, I'm not sure, and they're not able to answer that question, then I can, and they say, I'm not sure, I don't really have that experience. Can we, would you like, as a part, as the interviewee, I would say, I don't really have exactly that experience. Would you like to hear about this, or would you like to ask about something else? That's what you can say. It's way
Yeah.
better than going off here on a tangent,
Right.
though they're going to go glassy
Yeah.
eyed and tune yet.
Yeah. Knowing, being comfortable with your own stories and being able to be flexible with your stories for a variety of situations, it helps you shift if the question is not clear. I have had some experiences. I don't know if it's directly of what you're looking for, but you want to be comfortable with those kinds of lines in it, and that's why we're going to talk about it in a moment of being prepared. So let's go back to the PowerPoint, couple more points, and then we can kind of open it up a little bit. Come on, open up. All right. So two basic kinds of things, but you really, AI helps you a lot. I'm teaching people how to write questions. I actually encourage them to use it and then to craft it more for very specific, um, for the job. It really makes it even better for you. So you know about the company, you know about the job, you know what your strengths are. You've created your stories, you've crafted some questions. You also want to be you want to be ready for common questions too that aren't really specific. Why do you want this job? Know why you want it. It really struck me as something very interesting, really in line with what my career is. Have you know what you want to say? Describe just general questions, and a lot of times they do ask general questions. Be able to not only answer the general questions, be able to tie it back to the job itself that you're going towards. Again, 60 to 70 thing narrative about the basic question. Tell me about yourself. What's your background? Be careful in what you're telling them. You don't want to put them into awkward positions. You don't want to. There's some areas that are prohibited to be asked about. Your marital status, your religion, any of those things are. If you volunteered in your church, you can say that I volunteer in my church, but or my synagogue or whatever. You don't want to go too deep into those things. It puts them into awkward positions because there's some areas that are prohibited for asking about during an interview. And actually, there's a law out there called the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection. It was passed in the 60s, and it really basically says you really can only ask questions that are really tied to the job. That's why it's important for the hiring manager to know what the job is about. And it helps the candidate too. It makes so much sense for the candidate because I know what I'm applying for. I know what they're looking for. I'm bringing in, these are the skills. This is how I can, be linked to that job. So, um, but they will ask common questions. Tell me about yourself. Or do you have any questions? And that's kind of the next thing. Well, we haven't gotten to that one yet. So uh, we've talked about this. I can't, I was going to write it 4 times, but I decided to only write it once. You need to practice. You need to write out your stories in your star format, know what your stories are in relation to possible questions. Have somebody then ask you those questions and you answer them. Have them give you feedback about how well you answered it. A family member, a friend, someone you used to work with, someone is part of any one of these groups. Practice it. You really want to do that. And while a lot of our interviews now are on Zoom, practice it on Zoom. Don't pretend. If it's in person, do it in person. If you want to do a practice, you want to set the situation for what the situation is going to be. So I know there's going to be other programs that you have on AI. Actually, there is a website that will give you an AI interview. And there's different techniques in doing AI interviews that you want to be mindful of. But preparing for an AI interview, the prep is still the same. What are my stories? How can I tell my story in 90 seconds? How can I tie it to the knowledge, the skills, the abilities for that job, for different kinds of questions? The prep part is still the same. Practice, though, I can't stress it enough. even practice if there's no particular job that you're going for. Like you know you're going to be applying for administrative jobs. You see something on monster.com or on LinkedIn, and you can do all the prep for that, um, even if you don't have an interview set up. It gives you an opportunity to figure out how your story is going to work for a variety of different job interviews that you may possibly get. Because I know it's hard sometimes even to get the interview, but a lot of times that first interview is on Zoom. Um, so you want to actually practice doing it on Zoom or doing it on Teams or however you be able to do it both. I have to probably say most companies use a lot of companies use Teams now as well as Zoom. Do it both ways, and do it with a friend, a colleague, a friend, someone who can actually take you through doing it in that kind of a situation, and also doing it in person. Um, the prep is the same. What's your story? What are possible questions? How am I going to relate my experiences to those possible questions? And how am I going to be comfortable telling that story in a variety of different ways? And you may even want, if you're doing an interview, a practice interview, you may want your friend to change the question a little bit. Um, so you see what it's like to kind of get a question, because I always suggest, when you hear the question, don't answer it right away. Give yourself like about 15, 20 seconds thinking about it, and then start to speak. That You don't jump in and answer almost before they finish asking the question, especially if you've done some practice questions. So, all right. So you've gone up to this point. So next step is you're going to have the question. You want to, maybe, if you can, find out who's going to be interviewing you. Maybe look them up on LinkedIn. Is there anything shared interest that you may have with those people? Is there a connection? So you want to know, if you can. A lot of times you don't know who the person's going to be. You know who the HR person may be, who you may meet first. But if you can, find out a little bit about them or find out people who work in that company. Um, Always good to have like at least some knowledge of who you're going to be meeting, and plan your logistics. Um, where's the interview going to take place? Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be video? So knowing all of that. If it is in person, the general rule of thumb is get there 15, 20 minutes early. I say get there 30 minutes early, because then you can be sure you'll be there 15, 20 minutes early. You don't want to be late. And you may not know exactly where to go once you get to the building. No, it's being as well prepared as you can be. And know, if someone calls you and say, we'd like you to come in for an interview, where will I enter the building? Do I need to bring any identification with me? Um, do I need anything once I get to the building, once I get to the grounds? Will I be able to park there? Whatever, make sure you know the logistics. The person who's calling you, make sure you know the logistics, and be nice to absolutely everybody along the way. Be pleasant and nice to absolutely everybody. Someone once told me that they this person got the job because they were so nice, um, to the receptionist. It was like, oh, hi, and I'm here for the interview, and a little nervous. And they were just real people to that. And that the person who was the receptionist basically said, that's a nice person. I really like to have them work here. Makes a difference. Be nice to everybody along the way. Everybody is important in this kind of process of meeting people. If
Sarah,
it's a video,
I don't want to be negative, but on the other side of it, let's say you're frustrated with, like, the elevator was late, or like just something as you arrive. Here, even at our JVS, like, we have a lot of we take interviews to be accepted to a lot of our upskilling programs.
uh-huh,
And there
sure.
there have been cases where somebody was frustrated and quite frankly very, very rude to our front desk receptionist. And I got to tell you, it made it in 2 seconds. It made it back to the person who was interviewing. But it,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so, in that kind of situation, not you could plan as much as you can. You can do a test drive before, you can make sure everything is working, and things happen, guys. So the best thing to do is, if something doesn't go right and you're late, or you had trouble finding parking, and so you have 1 minute left when you gave yourself 20 minutes and you're frazzled, the best thing to do is literally find yourself like a corner or something, breathe, 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 and put your empathy hat on, your calm hat on, and walk in there as if nothing else happened in those 15, 18 minutes that was frustrating. Okay.
You
Because
know
you
what?
need to
So
show
I
up
do want to say
calm.
one thing though.
Yeah.
If I've been frustrated and I'm nervous and anxious, sometimes saying to reception, I say, "Oh, everything went wrong. I'm so frazzled right now. I'm trying to calm down." Being honest with that person, the person's going to have a lot
Yeah.
of empathy maybe for you. And
Correct.
say, "Oh, look, they were so nice, but they was frustrated, but they were nice to me."
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I guess it's just more, yeah, to the receptionist or the front desk person, it is so important.
make a
Okay.
connection. They have probably more uh, uh, value in the final selection. The other side of it is if it is a video one, make sure all of your equipment works. Go someplace where you're not going to have maybe a breakdown or something like that. But stuff happens. If it's you have a power outage, you have to figure out some way to let them know that you have a power outage and my equipment is not working today. Is there a way we can reschedule? Be honest with the people, but you want to test it, make sure that you know what the source is, how they're going to use it, stuff like that. Other things to be mindful of: bring copies of your resume. You may want to share that with them. And if you're going to be doing it online, be able to know how you could maybe share your updated resume with them. If there's a license requirement or something like that, make sure you have a copy of it with you that you can share. Sometimes you can't make copies of certain licenses, that you'd be able to say, I have a license, I brought it with me if you need to see it. A variety of things with that. So you want to, make sure you know the logistics. And as hard as it is, um, as frustrating as things can be on your best behavior. I mean, that's the best way to put it. And and take the advice of standing in a corner and taking a deep breath and then going and seeing the reception area. Saying like, man, everything went wrong this morning. I just need to take a deep breath. I'm here for the interview. So just they see you as being kind of a nice person. Um, and being honest is probably the best thing you can do. Okay, so what else? What else? All right, a couple more things. All right, I did a little quick research. And how did first impressions happen? People say, I mean, this is not me because I have no idea if, I didn't validate all of this, but it takes 7 seconds to make a good first impression. Smile, shake someone's hand, offer your hand, just acknowledge people. Um, a lot of it is nonverbal. How you react to people. You look at them when they're speaking to you. If you're in a panel interview, sometimes that's a real challenge. You got to move around to make eye contact with them. But it is, and if you're listening, pay attention and listen, nod your head. It makes it, you know, find make how do you connect that they know that you are engaging with them? And generally 90 seconds to make a decision. And that's actually something that I worry about, because sometimes unconscious bias on the part of the hiring managers will get in the way. And that's one of the reasons I always say it's best to have a panel, because my unconscious bias will be challenged if I say, oh, they did that well. No, the other panel members would go, no, they didn't. They can give me feedback. So, but in reality, generally it takes 90 seconds do they make people make the decisions within 90 seconds. So think about it when you're first meeting somebody. How do you greet them and how do you make that first contact? It becomes important. Just things to think about. Don't These are not something for the prep. You just want to think about when you're walking into the interview, how are you greeting everybody? And just to go back for a second, when you're doing your practice, you may want to ask the people, how was that when I first kind of started off? Because if it's a friend who's doing my practice interview, I may jump right in. And you want to actually do it as if you don't know the person who's asking you the questions. So thank you for that question. And let me tell you about a time that, so you really want to make it that you really are in a way connecting. So you really do practice reality. And that's hard sometimes when you're doing it with a friend. All right, during the interview, you want to be as personal and professional. You want to listen to what they're asking you. And you want to be honest and positive. If you don't understand something, as we said before, I'm not sure I'm clear on that. Let me restate that to make sure I'm answering the right question. Be positive. While I don't have that exact experience, I know that I've learned stuff that's similar to that. The next one is really hard. Manage your nerves. Learn how to, relax, keep your posture good, but manage. And you know what? People know you're going to be nervous. Hopefully, they work hard at making you feel comfortable. And if they make you more nervous, you may want to think about that. I know if you're looking for a job and you don't have a job, it's really hard to say I'm not interested. If they're giving you signals that are really negative, um, like they're finding out about you, you're finding out about them too. And if you have questions, make sure you have them prepared. And questions, you may want to know about, when will I, what are the next steps? So figure out questions that you're comfortable asking. What are the next steps in the process? Will there be, is there anything else you need from me? And ask questions if they haven't covered everything in the job. And a couple other things, you may want to know a little bit about the organization. What would the first 90 days be like on the job? Um, what are some of the things that the current teams are navigating? These are just kind of generic things. If you're comfortable with these, what are some of the priorities that the organization is moving towards? So you may want to have some questions for them. Make sure you think them through before you go in there so you're comfortable with them, and use that as part of your practice as well. So you get them spoken and you can see how they work for you. And now that it's finished, you do want to send a thank you note. And I've got some information on a thank you note. You want it to be personalized. Maybe reference something in the conversation. Uh, you might want to reinforce your value. A couple things that I was glad that I was able to bring to you. How I am good at really doing statistical analysis. The questions you asked really was a great opportunity for me to talk about some of the areas where I have some strength. Thank you for your time and insight, and for giving me so much information about the company, where we're going forward, and some professional polish. Um, I'm not always comfortable saying have AI write it. You may want AI to review it, and you may want to ask someone else to review it before you send it, but you don't want to take too long in sending out a thank you note. So um, with that, I could open it up for more discussion. What do you
Oh,
think? Oh, I
thank
do
you.
have one other. Let me share one other document that I'm going to put in the share.
Sure.
That one here. I did a one-page um, sheet. Oh, actually, it's 2 pages or 3 pages. I don't know. Interview preparation, and it gives you some real, kind of quick ways of kind of preparing for the interview. All right.
Perfect. Perfect. Sarah, I want to thank you so much
You're
for
quite
your
welcome. This was a
terrific
pleasure.
webinar, all of your pearls of wisdom to really help our job seekers. And I also
Hope
want to
so.
thank the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West and Project M for their generosity in sponsoring this. So thank you, Sarah.
Quite welcome. Quite welcome. It was my pleasure, actually. It was nice to know that there's maybe help a few people.